So there was a lot to like and love, and yes, kind of hate about the 93rd Academy Awards, which took place in April 2021. To be honest, I was pretty happy with the nominations that year. There wasn't much I heavily disliked in that group, from the top categories all the way down to the tech categories. For this video, I thought it would be fun to combine what I think were the best nominations and the worst nominations that year. I've chosen the 5 best and the 5 worst, and we'll go back and forth. And like in some previous videos, there are 3 rules. No winners show up here, only nominees. I can say a category only once and a movie only once. And with each of my 5 worst picks, I will give you what I would replace that nomination with. Are you ready? Here we go. The number 5 worst nomination at the 93rd Academy Awards is Supporting Actor Sacha Baron Cohen, The Trial of the Chicago 7.
Give me a moment, would you, friend? I've never been on trial for my thoughts before.
So if you've watched some of my recent videos, you know I wasn't a big fan of Aaron Sorkin's Being the Ricardos. I picked J.K. Simmons as being the worst Oscar nomination at the 94th ceremony. Now here at the 93rd ceremony, I'm picking another person in the Best Supporting Actor category for a film directed by Aaron Sorkin. I don't know what happened here. I have adored this man's work going back decades. I love his Oscar win for The Social Network. But The Trial of the Chicago 7 and Being the Ricardos, I really struggled with. And I've enjoyed the work, of course, of Sacha Baron Cohen throughout the years. He is a gifted comedic actor and a good dramatic actor too. There was just something about his performance in The Trial of the Chicago 7 that did not work for me. It felt like he was trying too hard, too showy. I thought there were better performances in that movie, like from Frank Langella, Jeremy Strong, Eddie Redmayne, Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I just didn't see what all the fuss was about. I didn't think what Sacha Baron Cohen did in that movie was in any way Oscar worthy, and so for him to get in here, it was kind of a shrug for me. In the Best Supporting Actor category, I would take out Sacha Baron Cohen for The Trial of the Chicago 7 and replace him with Kingsley Ben-Adir for One Night in Miami. The number 5 best Oscar nomination that year is Original Screenplay, Sound of Metal. So one good thing that came out of the 93rd ceremony was its emphasis on smaller films, independent films, movies that in other years, normal years, right, might not have shown up as much on Oscar nominations morning. I do think one film that was helped tremendously by a lot of major films being pushed into 2021 and 2022 was Sound of Metal. That likely would have been recognized at the Oscars in some capacity, no matter the year it was released, but because it came out in 2020, there weren't as many titles it would have normally been competing with, so thankfully Sound of Metal did very well, got lots of nominations across the board, in top categories, below the line categories. It won a couple prizes, which was awesome, and it got into like Best Picture, Best Actor for Riz Ahmed, and Best Original Screenplay. This category was pretty strong that year. I loved the winner, Emerald Fennell, for Promising Young Woman, and Minari was in here. That's a terrific film. But there was just something about Sound of Metal I really gravitated to. It's such a unique story, beautifully written on the page. This is a fantastic Oscar nomination for Sound of Metal. The number 4 worst Oscar nomination is Visual Effects, The Midnight Sky.
We're not receiving anything.
That puts our last contact with Mission Control at
3 weeks.
So again, because a lot of big movies were delayed into 2021 and beyond, we didn't get quite as many Oscar contenders for visual effects that we do in pretty much every other year. That's why we have some oddball choices here, like Love and Monsters, The One and Only Ivan. Christopher Nolan's Tenet won this prize. Nolan's films have done well in the past in this category. I would say the one nominee in visual effects this year that's kind of groan-worthy, that's kind of like, what? Like, really? Is The Midnight Sky. This was a year-end release directed by George Clooney that really came and went. I mean, I would say 6 months after this movie dropped on Netflix, nobody was talking about it. I remember putting it on and hoping for the best. The performances in it are fine. It's not a terrible movie by any means. It's just not very memorable, and that definitely goes for the visual effects. Like, sitting here 3 years later, I don't remember any visual effects in the movie. I just remember a lot of scenes indoors, George Clooney with a beard acting with a young girl. And so yeah, this visual effects nomination could probably go easily, especially because I think there was a movie that used VFX to a much greater extent in every way possible. My favorite film of 2020, The Invisible Man. The visual effects in that movie, how they are used to a dramatic extent to further the narrative in an exciting, terrifying way, how the film's star Elizabeth Moss interacts with the visual effects in scene after scene. It's stunning, absolutely stunning work. I don't care that it's a horror film. The Invisible Man deserved to get some Oscar nominations, including Best Actress for Moss, and definitely Best Visual Effects. In this category, I would take out The Midnight Sky and replace it with The Invisible Man. The number 4 Best Oscar nomination is Actress Carey Mulligan, Promising Young Woman.
Relax. Dean Walker, do you really think I would do something like that? Luckily, I don't have as much faith in boys as you do.
Emerald Fennell's debut feature was one of my favorite movies of the year. I think this movie is so divine in so many ways. It's surprising, bizarre, scary, funny, extremely well acted by an amazing ensemble led by the great Carey Mulligan. I have adored her work going back to An Education, and I've been following her career year after year, excited for her every new project. And one of her very best performances ever put to film is in Promising Young Woman. She carries this film like a pro, she changes her physical looks. The emotional arc to her character is fascinating. You never quite know exactly what she's thinking, and that makes this character and this performance so exciting for the viewer. Honestly, I loved all the nominations for Best Actress this year. Andra Day, Viola Davis, Vanessa Kirby, and the winner, Frances McDormand for Nomadland. But if I had to pick one, my favorite in the category, the person I wanted to see win Best Actress, was Carey Mulligan for Promising Young Woman. The number 3 worst Oscar nomination of 2020, Makeup and Hairstyling, Pinocchio.
Babo. Die.
So there have been a lot of Pinocchio adaptations in recent years. It gets kind of confusing. Like there was Guillermo del Toro's Pinocchio from last year, which won the Oscar for Best Animated Feature. There was another Pinocchio last year, the really bad one, directed by Robert Zemeckis and starring Tom Hanks. The 2020 version of Pinocchio that got 2 Oscar nominations is also confusing because it stars Roberto Benigni from Life is Beautiful as Geppetto, and there was a 2002 version of Pinocchio where Roberto Benigni played the title role. So in 2020, I remember just scratching my head. I was like, wait, what is this movie? Is it some kind of reissue of that notorious Miramax bomb that kind of destroyed Benigni's career? I did eventually catch up with the 2020 Pinocchio. It's fine. It's not terrible. The 2022 Pinocchio with Tom Hanks is much worse, but the 2020 version is very middle of the road. It's not that memorable. It did not need to receive 2 Oscar nominations. I just didn't think from a technical standpoint anything in that movie was all that impressive. I think there were much better films of 2020 to recognize in the makeup and hairstyling category. I would go for an underrated film that was completely ignored at the 93rd Academy Awards, Birds of Prey, starring Margot Robbie. I really like that movie. I wish it could have gotten in somewhere at this ceremony. Makeup and hairstyling would have made the most sense. So in this category, I would take out the 2020 version of Pinocchio and replace it with Birds of Prey. The number 3 best Oscar nomination is director Thomas Vinterberg, Another Round.
Største herfører, så er han også meget berømt for følgende citat. Jeg drikker aldrig før måneden.
So as I talked about in my recent video, the top 10 acting Oscar snubs of 2020, I adore Another Round. This was one of my 10 favorite films of the year. That lead performance by Mads Mikkelsen is divine. I wish he had gotten into the Best Actor category. But trust me, I was very thrilled on Oscar nominations morning when Another Round not only got into International Feature Film, which I feel was kind of expected, but also got into Best Director for the great Thomas Vinterberg. This was his first Oscar nomination. He's been doing excellent work for many years, especially his 2012 film The Hunt, also starring Mikkelsen. The director's branch of the Academy year to year usually nominates one international director, and for 2020 they went with Vinterberg. There is video of the man learning of his Oscar nomination in real time. It is fantastic. He was clearly over the moon about this major moment in his directing career, and I just love everything he brought to Another Round. It's such a confident movie. The handheld camera, the propulsive storytelling, the excellent performances, that ending. Another Round is a great movie. I think it should have gotten into even more Oscar categories, but I really do love that Best Director nomination for Thomas Vinterberg. The number 2 worst Oscar nomination, Supporting Actress, Glenn Close, Hillbilly Elegy.
I'm talking about a chance. You might not make it, but you sure as hell won't if you don't try.
Why do you even care what I do?
I ain't gonna live forever.
So if you've watched my Glenn Close and the Elusive Oscar video, still my longest video to date, about 49 minutes long, it goes through all 8 of her fascinating Oscar races. I was really excited at the time to explore her 7th Oscar race when she almost won Best Actress for The Wife. She was beaten out, of course, by Olivia Colman in The Favorite. The one race I didn't have much fun exploring really was the most recent one for Hillbilly Elegy. There just wasn't a lot to talk about there. She had no chance in winning. She was probably in 5th place here. Despite her overdue factor, nobody really liked Hillbilly Elegy. At the Oscars, it only got into Supporting Actress and Makeup and Hairstyling. The film was such a disappointment. On paper, it looked like it was going to be a huge Oscar player. I mean, Glenn Close, Amy Adams, Ron Howard. The trailer that came out a few weeks before its release on Netflix looked pretty good. Like, I was intrigued, definitely. But then the actual movie just sits there. It never came to life for me. I found it a slog pretty much the entire time. I mean, Amy Adams and Glenn Close are trying. They're not phoning in performances by any means. But I did feel like this was a rare circumstance where both Adams and Close just went too big in these roles. They never felt very grounded or realistic. This is by far my least favorite Oscar nomination for Glenn Close. I mean, let's face it, she got a Razzie Award nomination for this performance. So there were a lot of haters out there. It wasn't worthy of a Razzie nod, but it should not have gotten an Oscar nomination for Close. That one has always felt really weird to me. I will explore this movie in more depth in an upcoming Oscar Fiasco video. If you enjoyed my recent Oscar Fiasco video about House of Gucci, get ready. My in-depth examination of everything that went wrong with Hillbilly Elegy is coming. But yeah, in the Best Supporting Actress category, there were so many better contenders here, especially Helena Zengel for News of the World. This is a tremendous performance by a young actor. She got into almost every major precursor ceremony. In the supporting actress category, I would take out Glenn Close for Hillbilly Elegy and replace her with Helena Zengel in News of the World. The number 2 best Oscar nomination of 2020 is picture The Father.
I want my mommy. I want my mommy. I want to get out of here.
What can I say? This movie broke me. The Father is a masterpiece of acting, of storytelling. It's so emotional and effective. For the most part, this movie takes place in an apartment, and Anthony Hopkins and Olivia Colman are giving 2 of their finest performances. It is such a rich, involving narrative that these 2 bring to life. The direction is really strong, that Oscar-winning adapted screenplay. Of course, that Oscar-winning performance by Anthony Hopkins is just one for the ages. The Father was the last major Oscar contender that year that I saw just days before the ceremony, and I went, oh my god, Anthony Hopkins is winning. Anybody who sees this movie is going to vote for Hopkins. What he does in the film, especially in that final scene, is devastating, and as a whole, from beginning to end, this movie is a masterpiece. I'm happy it did so well at the 93rd ceremony, and I love that nomination for Best Picture. Alright, my choice for the worst Oscar nomination of 2020 is Adapted Screenplay, Borat 2.
You don't need to feel bad. I was just trying to give my daughter pleasure, and next thing I know, there is a baby inside her.
And no, I wasn't going to say the entire title and every single writer that got nominated for this movie, because we'd be here for 5 minutes. To be honest, this was kind of a hard choice to make. I mean, I've said it before on the channel so often. I love when the occasional comedy gets a major Oscar nomination in the acting categories, in Best Picture, in Screenplay. So why would I pick Borat 2, an adapted screenplay, as the worst Oscar nomination of 2020? A few reasons. One, I did not like this movie. I'm a huge fan of the first Borat from 2006. That movie was fresh and alive and very, very funny. The 2020 Borat sequel was only funny in fits and starts. One scene made me laugh hysterically, but most of this sequel just had me cringing and even bored at times. And overall, I just didn't think it worked very well. I mean, the best thing about it is Maria Bakalova, who got that really cool Best Supporting Actress nomination, but I take issue with the adapted screenplay nom because it's not very well structured, and let's face it, there's probably not much of a screenplay here, and the amount of people nominated is ridiculous. It's kind of embarrassing. Just the reading of this nomination went on and on and on. I mean, like 8 people got nominated for this one screenplay, and that just doesn't feel right to me. That is just way too many contributors, and at the end of the day, there were better titles to put in here. I am a huge fan of Kelly Reichardt, and it feels like she should have an Oscar nomination for something by now. Her movie First Cow from 2020 did extremely well at the Critics' Prizes. She got nominations and wins all over the place. She deserved Oscar nominations for Wendy and Lucy and Certain Women. And for many, I feel like First Cow seemed like it was finally going to give Reichardt her first Oscar nomination in the Best Adapted Screenplay category, and it didn't happen, so we could include Borat 2. I think the supporting actress nomination for Bakalova would have been enough for that film. In the adapted screenplay category, I would take out Borat 2 and replace it with First Cow. And my number one choice for the best nomination at the 93rd Academy Awards is something I didn't have to think twice about. This was always going to be my number one. It is, of course, Best Actor, Chadwick Boseman, Ma Rainey's Black Bottom.
Just taking it all wrong.
Ain't meant nothing bad, Levy.
Levy got to be Levy. You don't need nobody messing with him about the white.
I would say the main reason the 93rd Oscars left such a sour taste in our mouths wasn't necessarily the presentation, the different venue, the widescreen, the dumb category bits that stretched the ceremony out needlessly. It was how the ceremony ended. If you remember, the ceremony did not end with Best Picture. We had picture, then actress, then actor. And when I heard they were doing that, I said, oh, the late, great Chadwick Boseman is going to win Best Actor, because why else would they end the ceremony with the Best Actor category? That just seemed odd to me. The producers likely felt this was going to be the most emotional moment of the show, so let's end it with actor. But then, as you know, Boseman did not win in that category. Best Actor went to Anthony Hopkins for The Father, and especially with Hopkins not even being there to give a speech, the 93rd Academy Awards ended with the biggest, most insane anticlimax in Oscar history. The show just ended. It was so weird, and I've never forgotten that. But you know what? In retrospect, it makes sense why they were going to end with actor, because by all accounts, it did look like Chadwick Boseman was going to win Best Actor. He won pretty much all the precursors except for BAFTA. BAFTA went for Hopkins. The Father had a very late-breaking surge, and it didn't look like Hopkins had enough room to catch Boseman. The emotion for the film, his performance, the man, his body of work, seemed to be too massive for Hopkins to overcome. And here's the deal, I'm not sad that Hopkins won. That is one of the best performances in that category to win in the last decade plus. But similarly, Chadwick Boseman is on another level, is extraordinary in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. Just the performance he gives itself is terrific, but the knowledge that Boseman was aware he was dying and that he was going to give every part of himself to this last major film role makes his final performance all the more effective and haunting and masterful in every way. This is an actor giving every last piece of himself to one last amazing role, and he is just electric to watch in every scene of Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. It is a fiery, ingenious turn I will never forget. We will never forget Chadwick Boseman. What a spectacular actor, gone far too soon. We miss you, Chadwick, and all of your talent, all of your strength and humanity, your amazing performances in so many films across the years, across genres, especially your final Oscar-nominated performance in Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. It's my choice easily for the Best Academy Award nomination of 2020. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe, and let me know in the comments below what nominations at the 93rd Academy Awards did you love and hate? Do you agree with my picks, or do you think I have it all wrong? We'll see you next time at the Awards Contender.